Thank you.
Yep, and you are live.
Hello, everyone. Hi, welcome to the session. So today we are going to talk about how to build your own virtual assistant. I hope you guys are aware about virtual assistant. If you're not, that's fine. We will be doing a little bit introduction of virtual assistant and what they are in the start. But let's get into it. So to start with, so this is myself. I'm Asish Padhy. I have been in the industry for 15 odd years now. I'm an architect, developer, working on multiple platforms, Microsoft 365, Azure AI, and a lot of stuff. One of the one of the motto or one of the things that I always talk about is you dream it, believe it, and build it, because that's what we do. But I love to actually build solutions, and that's what yeah, we'll kind of look at something similar today. So yeah, so what are we going to talk today? We are going to look at a brief overview of what teams and bots and virtual assistants are about, all about, the buzz around virtual assistants. What does it mean for you and your organization? We'll do a quick demo, a live demo of how the virtual assistant sets up and what it does. It can get a little bit technical, so the non-techies in the call, please hold on to your things, and then go through that phase just to see the pain. But yes, so we'll do a quick demo. We will see how the things are set up with components, templates, how the flow works. This will be helpful for people who are actually building it. We'll know a little bit more about skills or things that we can do to extend the virtual assistants, and some of the use cases and things that you would like to know about virtual assistants as you are leaving the session. So some quick tips from me. If you are going to build something very soon, then what's going on there. So before I start, I just realized that I had put out a poll in the Q&A. Let's see if anybody. So we got roughly 7 responses, which is good. So the founder, not yet, but soon. I would like to pop. Okay, this is good. Full task oriented. Um, Senior developer, great. So building stuff. Director, good. Thinking about it, great. Type lead, interested to see if they become something of content. Yes, that will. Data analytics, yep, great. And yep, okay, cool. Right away considering, okay, good. Yeah, that's good to know. It obviously it's good for me to get a gaze of what my audience is like, and there is one more new. Good, great. It's good to know what the audience is like, and then how you guys are thinking about using it. This, mate, if you are joining this session for that, you are really in the right place, because we are going to talk about it. SharePoint is also very similar, and learning support. Yeah, that's good. So yeah, so it is good to know how you guys are thinking about virtual assistants, how you want to use it. I will obviously look at some scenarios today, but saying that it's not only restricted to that. Once you look at it, think from your perspective, and if you have any questions, I will be sharing my details later in the presentation, and you can connect with me there. Okay, cool. So to start with, let's go about and know what is a virtual assistant. So virtual assistants are nothing but they are like bots experience tailored to your brand. So I suppose the people who are on the call, I've already gone and understood a little bit about bots. So what bots are? The bots are basically artificial human interaction, um, interactive component or interactive solutions that actually sit and then do the human interaction instead of a human on the other end, and they actually help to give that human feel of a response. So that's what bots are about. And then what virtual assistant is doing is actually extending that experience through the whole organization. So it's a cumulative bot experience tailored to your brand or organization. It's a conversational assistant across broad range of applications. So you can use it across, for example, you can do it to your to-dos, you can do it calendar, you can do email, you can do anything actually. You can have a bot that actually is a part of a virtual assistant. Think of a normal case, like if you have a assistant in your organization who is available to everyone, that's what we are looking for. It is personalized to your users and your brand. It is extensible to skills, And skills are nothing but extensions of your virtual assistant, which allows you to plug in components into it and basically extend your virtual assistant, not be limited to the functionality it was initially built for. And there is a great starting point with templates, and we'll look at quickly on that. Cool. So what does it mean for an organization? Now, bots are there. You have been building bots, for example, let's say, and if you have not been, you will be thinking about it. Maybe you are going to work on a problem or a thing that you're trying to solve. You would be creating something as part of it. But what about the things that you have already created? What about all the collateral and the experience and the work knowledge that already is there in your organization? Can you just start using that as part of this journey? Can you start mapping this to something that is already out there, the data and the need? Can you map them together? So that is the core of a virtual assistant. It's the business ownership that is already lying, the business knowledge that is already lying within your organization. Then we take it to the next level. We try to apply custom abilities and processes to it. Like, for example, you want it to be interactive, you want it to do smart stuff, you want it to be like reading through photos or reading through forms or doing some things automatically. You want it to do automated prompts, activity tracking. You want to create a custom flow around it, not just a like a rudimentary flow that does only one thing. You want to create a extensible, smarter flow that goes and does a lot of stuff around it. Then you want to use this as a starting point and not just that solution that you're building, but actually extend it to more than just being that particular build solution that you thought of solving. It's just like, for example, if you had a real-time assistant and you train them on doing something, not saying that you cannot train them on doing something else, and they will learn and they will do it, and that's the beauty of having an assistant. The same thing that we are going to look at virtual assistant for is that start with a startup point, but also extend it as you go and focus on the combination of the strengths and the services that are provided within your organization. So this is the tiers that you actually look at virtual assistant and how you would be spanning. So first of all, you have to think about what is there in your organization that you want to leverage, what you want to improve, where you want to use it, what hopefully there is a business problem you want to start with, how you want to improve that business model, what are the smartness that you want to build into it, and what is that starting point. Don't just go build everything into one, because that will be so humongous and it will take forever and it will obviously cost you a lot of money. Start with a starting point that will really solve a problem, and then with the flexibility of what virtual assistant does, you can extend it as you go. Cool. Now, obviously, as part of virtual assistant, there are interfaces which we call channels where your virtual assistant can interact with. Now, saying that with this remote work concept that has been going around for a few months and the remote work world we live in, Microsoft Teams has been on focus. So Microsoft Teams can help you build that journey very fast, and it will help you to connect those dots without explicitly spending a lot of effort in doing it, but a simpler flow that will actually go and extend that interaction to the users very easily. So Teams acts as a hosting interface for your bots. Virtual assistants are code running in Azure app and listening to the team app events. Virtual assistants can use multiple cognitive services, Louis, Q&A Maker, image, speech, Bing, Azure Search. So you guys can see I've just put few examples, but there are so many different stuff that you can include as a part of a virtual assistant. And some are really core to make it work, like the bot service, that's really core. The storage content is a core. Azure Search is a core. Cognos is a core. Cosmos is a core. So those things are actually kind of fundamentals that your virtual assistant will start with. But then you can add Bing Maps, the Bing News, the Q&A Maker, Lewis, and all those smartness of cognitive services on top of it. Responses from the VAR, the virtual assistant, are then fed back. So you get the input from your user, you process that input with your help of your virtual assistant, and then you send the response back to your team. So your Teams is basically your front end in that sense. Cool. Now, we obviously saw a little bit of virtual assistant, how it can be leveraged, how it can be used, what's the benefit around it. But let's talk about the templatizing of virtual assistant, because as you guys can saw, there are so many components in it. If I have to do it, if you have to go about doing it yourself, you will just take so much time. Even my session will not be able to help you. So what has Microsoft done is Microsoft has collated all the documentation into one and created a package which you can then just go ahead and script it, like with C# or TypeScript. You can start with the starting point, which they call as a template. Now, with the template, what happens is there are few things that come along with it and which are core to the virtual assistant. So the virtual assistant comes with a dispatch, a skill, a Lewis, and a Q&A, and bot skills that are coming along with it. So the dispatch is basically trying to understand which skills you are going to use as part of it, and it depends on Lewis for that. And skills are basically the work that the virtual assistant does. So for example, if you are, and we'll see today is like you want to search for a latest news that is there in your location. If you want to say that, hey, give me the latest news, and the virtual assistant does 10 different things, it needs to identify that you are actually asking for a news bot requirement. So the dispatch skill is actually helpful in identifying which skill it needs to talk about. And then once you are in that skill, then the bot or the skill takes over. Then you go through the flow of a skill, and it will help you answer the question that you're looking for. And Lewis and Q&A are the fundamental component, and same with the other skills that you have built into the bot or the virtual assistant. Sorry. Now, saying that there are two vertical components that sit across the virtual assistant and really important. One is the content moderator, because it helps you to moderate the content that is coming into your bot, so that people are not using foul language or something that your organization doesn't want to be processed through your system. It doesn't make sense if you're searching for somebody like BS in your news, like give me something like that. You don't want that to go through. So the content moderator will help you to filter that out. And the same thing with telemetry. Telemetry is obviously helpful to know how is your virtual assistant performing, what's the issues, what's the failures, success rate, and all those. So it gives you a quick understanding of what your virtual assistant is doing. Cool. So some of the points there: support by telemetry, core scalability, support for content moderation, core support of Lewis and Q&A, and extensibility with skills. So this is like the template that is built as a starting point for Microsoft. So Microsoft gives you these things, not all the skills, some like a skills template to start with, and then you can take those examples and build on top of it. So just to clarify, the skills template is not part of the virtual assistant template. The virtual assistant template is only the virtual assistant. Then you take the skills template that is available separately, and then you plug them in. But mostly all of them are built on the same concept. The skill is slightly different from the bot. Virtual assistant. Okay, so this is the flow, the design flow that Microsoft has posted on their site, and this is how you can see that interaction happens. You can have user inputs, you can have channels, you can have devices. So IoT kind of scenario is also possible. They all interact through a bot service, which comes to a bot framework, which is a virtual assistant. The same cognitive. So it's the same thing that I showed in the previous slides, but this is the Microsoft version of it. Now, the reason I'm showing this is to stress on the flow that is important. So as you're looking at this Microsoft concept, you're like, okay, where do I start? So most of the time people are lost, like, should I start talking about channels? Should I talking about user inputs? And they are lost, like, how do I go about doing it? So how do I say it's just simple to divide it into three phases. One is define. So define your knowledge sources, define your channels, define your user inputs, and define your skills that you are going to work on. So define those things as a starting point, and then you build the Q&A maker. Start with a simple virtual assistant, then Q&A maker skills, and then custom skills, and then you deploy, and then you make it work. So these are the three phases that I see that people get, well, as of understanding, and from a technical standpoint at least, understand of how to build it easily, so that you are not just looking at different things and you're like, okay, which devices am I going to work with? And some of the times people are confused. Do they need everything to start with a virtual assistant? No, actually you are not. You can just start with one of those. So you can just start with either or. This is just the whole concept that you might be looking at ultimately. Cool. So what are the steps for a virtual assistant? Now this is where we are going technical now. So people who are non-technical, just wait and just listen. This will be helpful if you are, if you want to tell your tip. This is how you do it. I know it. So this is the steps basically. So you get an Azure subscription to start with, because you need Azure to host the virtual assistant. You need to set up Lewis. You need to install the prerequisites for the VS. So I'll show you guys the site where the steps are. Then you prepare the cost and the hosting plan. It's good to know about some costing figure that you're working on. Don't start with zero because there are some costs that are mandatory here, so you will spend some money. Or else get a free Azure plan to just try it out. Create a virtual assistant using a template, then you deploy the Azure sources, you customize the solution to your organization needs, you build and add skills, and you start using the virtual assistant with teams. So these are like 6 or 7 simple steps that you need to do, but there are a lot of things that go into those steps. And okay, so we will jump on to custom skills. Let me just show you guys the site so you pretty much are aware about happening. Okay, so so this is the site. You can go and search for, and the links are there in my deck also, which is hosted on my personal site. So if you go to site and then you go to, for example, presentations, you will have the virtual assistant tag there, so you can just go through this, and the links are on the down on the back. So you just scroll to the last, and there are the links, so you can just go to the link from here and then add on to the site. So if you come here, there are different sections. They're grouped under virtual assistant skills, and there are example skills on the bottom. You start with the virtual assistant. You start with one phase that you're working with, create. You start with one language that you are going to use, TypeScript or C#. And then in C#, you go to intro, you go to understand. You have already seen this video, so you just seen this session, so it should be easy start for you. You go and download all these packages in the order that they have given. You install them. Then you go about creating a system, and I will go a little bit about that. And then you provision Azure sources, and so they have done a good job in documenting this. So normally I would write a blog to extend this, and I suppose I have to write a blog just because there are still things that are missing that people are not clear about. But saying that this is quite extensive, so if you have a little bit of a knowledge about how what's work and virtual assistant work, you can still go ahead and use this documentation and go start with it. So cool. So these are the steps of starting, and go through this documentation. It will help. But in today's demo, we will just look at some of them. Custom skills. So we looked at the bot scenario and whatever. So we look at the bot, sorry, the virtual assistant, the skills, and where to go and do it. But this is all about starting it. But if you have to create something custom for your organization, you have to obviously build a custom skill around it. So there is a skills template as a starting point, so you can use that to start it. You don't have to go and write a thing from scratch. You can use the skills template to start. Then you actually go about extending that custom bot to a skill. You add the skill to a virtual assistant, uses the but skills command, and that's also in there in the documentation. I'll show you just now. And then you update the dispatch skill in the assistant so that it knows that your bot is now connected, or skill is now connected to the virtual assistant, and it starts understanding what it means technically. I'll show you guys a little bit about how Lewis does that. And then it supports authentication. So if you are using your Google or your Azure AD, those are all integrated, so you can authenticate based on the user permissions. Then there is a CLI tools for actually linking and working with skills as such. Cool. So we'll do the demo, but before that, let me go ahead and look at the skills. So the skills ones is almost the same. You go to skills, create C#, the same intro. You have a download and install, so same stuff. You install it. If you have done it for the virtual assistant, you don't need to do it for the skill. So you can just skip all those PowerShell and install and all those stuff, and you just go about doing it, and then you provision the virtual Azure resources. Okay, without further ado, let's see the end product. So hopefully the guys who are actually trying to build it are are happy to see what it actually turns out to be like, and then that will give some idea about what I'm talking to. Cool. So this is my team, and we will look at one of the virtual assistant that I have in there. So this is my virtual assistant. It is there for some time. Generally, when you install it, it will come with something like this. So it will show you like, hey, I got installed on the Teams, pleased to meet you, and it will ask your name. And that is the sequence once. It doesn't ask you every time. So you don't need to, and it doesn't record outside. You can record it, but it doesn't record on its own. So let's say we start with the initial conversation. I say hello. The bot goes and looks it up, tries to understand what I'm trying to do, and then based on that, one of the flow in the bot or the virtual assistant. Sorry, I'm keep saying bot and virtual assistant. Replacing, but that's the same thing. Just that virtual assistant is in a higher concept, a combination of bot skills. So it just said hello. I can say please introduce yourself. Now this is not that you will get in the template. This is I have trained my bot to do it. And what it does is, even though I had a spell mistake, it understood that it has to introduce itself, and it came and said, hi, I'm Mike Cortana, your personalized assistant. So this is an answer that is there in my Q&A knowledge base, and I'll show you guys very soon. And what it does is, when I say, please introduce yourself, it understood that actually I'm asking to introduce the tool itself, and I've called it my Cortana because I've been just fascinated with using Cortana, and then it's building something extending to that. So it kind of understands that okay, you are trying to ask about the like the component, the virtual assistant themselves itself. So it goes and pulls the answer from the Q&A knowledge base and says that okay, this is what you're looking for. Now I can try to invoke a skill. For example, I will say, what's the latest news? My virtual assistant has this news skill attached to it, which will actually go ahead and pull news from the web live, and it will show it in cards. So it will just go ahead and give me the latest news. I don't have to go about searching in Google or opening my phone or anything. It will just give me the news right here. So I'm just it's obviously taking some time to warm up. So it's asking what topic I'm interested in. Obviously, uh, that's the technology. And since I'm a tech enthusiast, so let's say I'm looking for technology, it will ask me what. Oh, there you go. So I think the next question is, it asks me which region I'm looking the information for, but because I have used this before, it knows already which region I am a part of. So it didn't ask that question. So it knows from it, like previous experience at conversations with me, that I'm actually in Australia. So it knows that, okay, I'm going to give you the Australian news first. So there you go. So this news just came in from Bing, and it just shows me, I don't know why KFC is in there, but maybe there's something technology in there. So nuggets, don't know. And SKI. So you guys can see this is with the kind of thing. This is not something that I'm just stimulating it. It's real news that is coming from. So you can see it's coming from Zoom technology. And let's try something else. Yes. And we'll give the hot topic. Give the hot topic. Let's see. And it doesn't do anything. It just posts on Bing Search API and just returns the result. So there you go. So that's not good news. Yeah, so you see, so it is latest news that is coming from from the web, and it is interacting, it's understanding, and you can click on that news, you can get to the news, and you can read it. Now, not saying that this is this is something really useful to everyone, but I'm just showing the possibility of integration where this can be actually from your internal news, and you can just go ahead and have your whole internal news coming up here as part of this experience. There is another scenario that I would love to show, but it doesn't work in this one. Web platform for that. So what's in my what meeting? So this time I'm going to invoke a calendar skill, which is part of my virtual assistant. So what meetings do I have today? and hopefully it will come with some answer, but mostly it will give me a login screen because there is some issue with tokens sharing from Teams to Outlook and it doesn't work. So there is some issue going on and doesn't log in also me. So we'll look at the web version of it. What we will do. So this is the backend, this is not the chat stuff. This is the tech stuff. So we'll go and look at something on the virtual assistant. So this is the virtual assistant. This is just the web interface of it. So I can define any other channel, but this is the web interface. One will obviously initiate every time, so it just has the same. What? So the only thing is this is running from my company account. So things that I have been doing with clients today, which necessarily. So there you go. So it bought my meetings for today. So looking at this, you can see that it actually went ahead and it pulled the data from my calendar itself. So this is possible because you can extend the virtual assistant with custom skills that are already there, or sorry, skills that are already built. So calendar skill is an example that Microsoft has given us, or you can build your own bot skills and then that can come through and get connected to your virtual assistant. So cool. Now we looked at the the working part of it. Let's look at how do you go about architecting it. So the architecting bit, the most key thing is Lewis. So I was talking about how do you go about distributing the commands and everything. So this is the Lewis structure. So this is the dispatch, and this is the dispatch Lewis app, which actually helps to distribute the commands that are coming to the. So what happens is whenever I say a sentence, uh, it is interpreted into a command, which is called as an intent. So that's a language processing skill. So what it does is it understands everything that you are saying and then maps to a command that you are looking for. Basically, when I said what meetings do I have today, what I'm asking for is basically a meeting. Find me my meeting. So if I go to calendar skill, I will have, not here, but in the calendar skill itself. So basically, that is the dispatch, which dispatches. But if I go to my calendar skill, which is the bot, I'm basically looking for check availability. So what happens when I say what meeting do I have today? It actually interprets that actually I'm looking for availability, or no, sorry, it should be find my entries, not availability. Yeah, find calendar entry. So I'm actually asking for find my calendar entity from my calendar. So it's just like what meetings do I have today, and if I have to do by somebody else, I need to have access to the inputs, but I can go and find somebody else calendar entry, or that is find availability, which is like find me availability. So for example, if you are working with people who are highly busy and they are really on the road all the time, and you are also on the road, so you don't have time to go and check their calendars, you can just invoke your virtual assistant and say find me the time slot in their calendar and just go and book it. One another use case that I've seen people do is form recognizers, where actually people can go ahead and have a file or data that they have got. They want to process it, but they don't have time to go through a PDF file and read everything. They use a form recognizer with a kind of a virtual assistant, and they give the file to it and say that, okay, just try to give me the input that I'm looking for, and it will just go and process the file and then give you an input. So that's one skill that is already there, but you can connect to your virtual assistant. So there are some examples like that that you can start thinking of, and what you have to do is first create a bot for it. So you have a skill general, and general is like, okay, I'll just say hello. So what does hello mean? And it will give you an answer. And if I want to talk to my virtual assistant, I can go ahead and do some fun talk with it. So this one. So this is what I'm saying. It doesn't log in. So if I say cancel, it will cancel this flow. Reset. I can do something else. So I can say, how are you doing? Just passing time, I think. Trying to play with my bot. Sitting quitting board. I don't have anything good to do. So it will just go ahead and understand what it's trying to say, and there you go. It kind of misunderstood what I was saying. Um, Sort of asking me some comment. So the thing is, the chit chat is nothing but which is like a Q&A thing. It's just stuck on the calendar stuff somehow. Okay, so the chit chat stuff is nothing but just like it. You can actually go ahead and talk to your bot and just ask questions. Actually, I might have to pull some examples from the bot itself. So if I go to my Q&A maker, and this is a good point to show you guys the Q&A maker. So remember I was talking about that answer that I got. So that is in my Q&A maker. So you say, please introduce yourself. Who are you? Kotana. That is my answer. And actually, I asked that question. It mapped to my Q&A maker through the dispatch skill, and this is the answer I got. So the Q&A maker is like a knowledge base of all the data that you have in your system or your organization, and that can be linked with your virtual assistant, and they can all work together. So if I go to the chit chat, so this is the chit chat. So basically, I can say something. Yeah, there you go. That's an interesting one. I can say, so what happens is, yeah, so it just went ahead to the Q&A maker and actually extracted that answer that was there and then showed it here. So I don't have a body. That's the answer that is there. So it just pulled that answer. So you can have fun stuff that is happening with your bot. The bot can actually post out jokes in some cases. Some of the bots have been doing that, but your virtual assistant can behave more human-like. So people who are interacting with it, or your users who are interacting with it, actually can get a relationship, can make a connection with it, like Alexa or Google or something out there. So cool. So this is the FAQ, which is basically your knowledge base. The chit chat is most like a human interface or a human component of it. And they are connected to the Lewis, which actually goes in dispatch from the VA, from the skill, and it has particular command connections. And then basically you come to your this is your basically your kind of the So here, this is where you come about launching your bot and doing everything. So if I look at the bot constitutes a lot of stuff. So it constitutes of for example, your app services, your Lewis, your uh, your app service like the website where it is hosted, the Cosmos DB, the Azure Search, uh, and then the storage container. So there are a lot of stuff that constitute as a part of your virtual assistant. And then they keep on expanding as you start growing, and the cost is also heavy, so you actually spend a lot of money on a basis of month based on the resources as you start working through it. And the same thing when you actually start with the virtual assistant template and you deploy. So this is more technical stuff now. So this is the template that is so this is the starting point that you get when you create a bot from a C# virtual assistant template. You got all these folders, and that is a deployment folder which has the Lewis commands and the scripts to deploy, and that's where you are invoking your virtual assistant from, and then creating the virtual assistant out of it. There is something that called the parameters file, and this is where you actually set your free tiers. So if you go in and run your deploy as been given in the documentation, you will actually end up with a very costly bill because it's just creating standard SKUs and it's like a live environment. I would suggest to use the parameters file, which has the free tiers in it. And then, so basically I have this one, which I set it to free tiers. And sometimes you cannot have more than one Lewis. So you have to take that cost on you if you are doing skills and virtual assistants. But I use this and set it up so that the resources that are created are actually free. And in some cases, you have to actually tweak the flow to create it. Like if you go to deploy, and this is more technical, you go to that particular resource that you are creating. Oh, no, sorry, not here. You go to template or JSON, and you go to the resource that you're creating, and you actually change it from, something to free. For example, I was working on this new skill, and it needs maps and being search, new search. They are kind of costly services. I didn't want to pay for it. So what I did, I click the system, I actually create them manually, and then run the script, so it will just link them all together. So I used the existing search and the existing, the Bing search and the map API, and then you just connected it. And the same, and how does it connect is through the app settings.json. If you come here, there's all the parameters that is uses to connect. So the Cosmos DB, the blob storage, the framework skills, that's the skills that is linked to, the LUIS, the content moderator, and this is how it is linking all those components together. And if you go to cognitive models, that's another one, which has all the LUIS and the Q&A maker connected to it. There are two files that the devs need to know about: app settings and cognitive models, which are actually linking things together. And deploy and parameters. This is the file that it comes with. You can rename it to parameters.json. These are the files that you need to know about to create the resources. Now, once you are in the virtual assistant, it's a simple bot. You go to the bot controller, and then you go to dialogues, which are the main stuff where you start coding and changing anything that you want. Cool. One thing. So when you go to a skill, what's the difference between the virtual assistant and the skill? Is this manifest? So that's basically the main major difference. It has the same stuff. It has the template. It has everything the same. The main difference is the manifest. So what happens is the difference between the skill and the virtual assistant. The virtual assistant is always a consumer. So if you understand the factory pattern or something like that, the virtual assistant is always a consumer. It always consumes the skill, whereas skills are producers. So they actually produce outputs. They are actually connecting back. And the connection happens through this manifest file. So if you go to 1.1, this is for the virtual assistant, and 1.0 is for Power Virtual Agent. Okay. So if you go to 1.1, you go ahead and put your website URLs after you provision them, your app ID, and then you use the bot skills command to link them. So you need to first create the skill, deploy the skill, update your manifest, publish it, and then connect it to your virtual assistant using the bot skills CLI. And your manifest needs to be updated with those parameters that will connect to your virtual assistant. So these are the two. This is the main difference between a skill and a virtual assistant, and that's how they get different from each other. There could be other subtle differences within the code itself. I've never spent so much time doing it, but basically, if you look at the skill has more inputs because this is like a calendar skill, and that has a lot of stuff. But it has the same app settings.json, which gets updated, cognitive models which get updated. One key thing to know about is if you're working through an authentication API, this is something you need to put, the OAuth credential and OAuth connections. And where you need to update that is if you go to your not virtual assistant, basically you go to your calendar skill, or where you are going to use the authentication, you go to the bot and you go to your settings, and down here is the OAuth connection settings. So you go ahead and update this with the tenant ID, the scopes that you're looking for, account graph, or the API that you're using. And there are steps for it on the skill itself, but this is what you set to actually authenticate. So it will authenticate the users. It will ask for the login automatically. You don't have to write a single line of code. The calendar skill already has that code built into it. And then same thing with any custom stuff that you're working on. So you have to use that kind of parameters to tell that the bot needs to authenticate in a particular fashion, and the bot will do that, or a virtual assistant or skill will do that. Cool. I suppose those are a lot of stuff that you guys can start. Oh yeah, that one other thing is the app, the Azure AI app, which you guys will start getting created as you start working through it. And if you go into one of them, the one thing that you need to know is this web data redirect API endpoint. What happens is sometimes you go to Teams and you have this issue, and that's what I'm investigating and still figuring out. If you go to the this one, if you go to the Teams, you go to the App Studio and go to Manifest Edit, and this is where you install it. This is my test, so I don't have to do a package or anything. I just do it through the App Studio. You go to domains and permissions, and sometimes you will get this valid domain issue, and this is where you need to put the rewrite URI, and that will work. And the app ID and resource if you need to provide that. But this is where if you are doing authentication and it's failing, you need to get that URI and put it here, and that will work. Cool. Let's jump back to our presentation and just do some final. So cool. So some of the use cases we did talk about, and something to rehash, sorry, is the single routing interface for multiple port scenarios. So basically, a virtual assistant is your is your center point, and which is actually coming in and routing the request. So for example, service desk, any kind of help scenarios, any kind of assistant related scenarios, which is like a center point where information is coming in, and then you are using multiple sources of truth to get the data to the users. That's where your virtual assistant will be really, really useful. If you want to start with something, start with those scenarios and you still some output upfront. You can do an automatic learning platform with multiple channels. So for example, if you want to actually gain data as you are building, for example, feedback, or you are using for your feedback, not feedback, but kind of your knowledge sources to actually gather the inputs from different platforms like Salesforce, Office 365, your custom ERP system, and want to connect them all together, and you want to create a learning platform based on it. You can use a virtual assistant in that scenario. Some of the examples could be customer service, planner organizer, go to help, support requests. Now these are very, very known and startup points for it. There are other business cases which are more practical and you can start using them, but it's easy to grasp something that is really useful from day one, at least in this remote work. These are the three examples I see a lot of people asking for all time. So you guys can start with some of one of this and then get that traction. Some quick things to know. As I was talking about, update the parameter templates or JSON, quickly train your Q&A in Lewis, activate the Lewis. This is really critical if you have not done it. Do it per region. So I'm in Australia, so I get au.lewis.ai. So there are regions for Lewis that you go and activate your Lewis key on, and you use that. Identify the load and the plan cost for search. So that is a heavy engine, Azure Search, because it uses the knowledge mining kind of concepts to actually understand what data comes through and where it goes to. So be mindful. It's not free. It's going to cost you money. So plan for that cost, especially if you are going to use it in organization scenario. Update the skills with dialogue with custom prompts and flows, or don't just use what you are getting from an example. Update them to personalize it, because that's what a virtual assistant is for. Deploy the skill to a virtual assistant for complete individual testing using bot. Yes, I didn't show that, but bot emulator is really helpful. And this is kind of example of a bot emulator where you get these kind of messages, and you can actually look at that message and see something, what is going on and what is wrong with it, and helps you trace. So you can do some local debugging with the bot emulator before you post your virtual assistant to Azure. So that's really helpful, and use that to actually test your bot before you start releasing to your live environment or anywhere, or Azure itself. Don't make skills too specific or heavy. So it needs to be optimal. It doesn't need to be too granular, because then you are making too many skills, or too heavy that it is just like a complex bot and you cannot manage it. So make it optimal. So it should be a balance between what you are getting and how heavy it is, and then scalable is the key thing. Create granular and independent skills so you can reuse in multiple virtual assistants if need to. And use the direct line speech for, like, if you want to talk to it and just do something, that's where you're. So these are some of the locations that are there on my site. And again, I will show it here. Where did I have it? I had it open somewhere. I'll open it. So if you go to my site and go to presentations, and there you go. So you go to presentation, and that's the first deck, and you just scroll to the last, and there are the links, and you can just this deck is a little bit older because we're going to talk for some time now, about a year. So you can go ahead and use the link. The links are still valid, and then you can start using them. I will update if there are any links that have changed. I think some links have changed, but I'll update them. There are sample skill GitHub repos and sample virtual assistant repos, so you can go ahead and get examples. The bot framework team and the bot solutions team are working really hard in expanding those things. And there are updates. Like, I've been doing this talk for last year, and there is not a time when I have done this talk again and I don't have to run the whole virtual assistant again because there is some change on it. So this time they updated the Lewis endpoint. So I have to give the endpoint URL. Without that, it was not taking it. So there is always continuous changes. So keep yourself up to date, and keep looking out for these locations and keep yourself rehearsed with what it comes your way. Cool. So I suppose thanks everyone for joining. I know I did a quick overview of virtual assistant. This is very very high level, and that there are some technical stuff I did so, but this is again to just you guys to guys a understanding of the field. People who are technical, if you are interested, put post on my blog or Twitter or LinkedIn. You guys can reach out to me and let me know what you are looking for. I will blog on them, or I will help you directly if needed. But basically, look for the solutions that you are actually trying to solve with this scenario, and try to get some startup points to start doing it. And there are helpful materials out there which you can actually go and look through to get started. Obviously, this is a new field, and there are a lot of things that are still changing. There are a lot of things that are coming. So there will be changes every now and then. But the beauty of this is, because you're starting now, you have lesser time to adopt later. This is going to happen, obviously. So it's good to start now. You and the organization start thinking about how to improve, and especially with the remote work scenario we are in, it makes really like a lot of benefit to start it at a point when you get higher adoption. So cool. I think that's all from my end. I think I'll hand it over to Nadia.
Awesome. Thanks, Ashish. Hi, everyone, for joining. I'm just going to take you through some upcoming events. And in that time, Ashish is going to go through a few of the questions that have also been asked as well. I'll just share my screen with you all. Awesome. So for those of you who may not know, most of you would know, you can find out more information about all the events that we have up and coming on our meetup page. So meetup.com/Microsoft Reactor Sydney. I will be posting the recording of the session into the actual event page as well, so keep an eye out for that. You can find out some information on our Twitter page as well, which not only shows what we're doing here in Sydney, but also globally with all our other reactors. Our YouTube channel also has a lot of the content and sessions that we've done previously, and also you'll find this session up there as well. If you've got any questions about the reactor, or you're interested in partaking and doing a live stream yourself, just email us at reactorsid@microsoft.com, and one of us will get back to you. So a couple of the events that we do have up and coming this week and next week, we have a session on Azure Data Explorer. So this session, you're going to learn about big data analytics using Azure Data Explorer, and they'll take you through some demos and scenarios. So that's this coming Thursday at 3 o'clock to 4 o'clock. The week after, we do have a session called Ethical Challenge of Using Facial Recognition Systems. So this is going to be sharing, things that Microsoft has learned and produced actionable guidance towards addressing these challenges and using real-world examples. So from our Windows Hello and Face API as well. So this will be a really interesting session. So that'll be next week at 6 o'clock. And then Ashish will also be running another session as well called Build Quick and Easy AI Solutions using Power Platform in an hour. So Power Platform tools such as Power Apps, Power Virtual Agents, and Power Automate allow to integrate AI smart solutions in a quick and easy process. So she's just going to go through some solutions and steps to implement AI solutions using Power Virtual Agents. So with this session, there are quite a few prerequisites. So for example, having an active Office 365 or Power Platform subscription. You'll find out all that information. There's a big breakdown of the list as well, like reviewing some Power Platform blog posts and making sure that you have everything activated before you actually have the session, because this will be quite hands-on. And so you'll be going along with Ashish in the session as well. So if you've got any feedback for this session, you can leave us some feedback in our survey. So it's aka.ms/reactor/survey. I'll pop it in the chat as well, and you can use the event code 7706. So I'm going to now pass this over to Ashish to answer some of your questions that have come through.
Okay. Yes, thanks, Nadia. So I think I'll share it again just because there is some stuff that I want to share. Sorry, Nadia, I'll be taking over. So
that's right.
Yeah. So let's suppose you guys can see my screen. So cool. So I think some very interesting questions in the Q&A. So I'll go through one by one, but feel free to keep asking, keep pointing out stuff that you need. So the first question is, I'm trying to understand the various options to deploy in Teams. Can you deploy the virtual assistant as a user, simulate as a team member, external app? So the answer to that question is yes, you can do that, but it cannot be deployed as a user. It is always deployed as an app because this is an app. What it can do though is impersonate as a user inside of it. So you can just say that the bot answers are actually posted as a user, and it can actually behave, and actually it does post as a user because it behaves like a user. So if I go now to my bot example that I was working on, and you guys can see actually I can chat with my bot and that acts like a user. It obviously doesn't get a user ID and all those stuff, but you can impersonate that within the virtual assistant itself. But if I go to the chat, it acts like a user there. So I can chat with the bot or the virtual assistant like I'm chatting with any normal person. And that's the concept of the virtual assistant, right? As we were saying, it's trying to impersonate human behavior. So you could actually make it feel like your bot is a user, give it some funny name, like one of the client had called it Polly. I think Polly was Polly. I think Polly is already there as a poll, but they called it that. But you can give it a fun name. It can give it an image. It can give it a branding, and basically just act it like a human person and don't make it seem like it's a bot. So if you personalize your virtual assistant, it will act like one. So you can do that. And then the technical side, you can always impersonate or do something if you want to use delegated permissions or something. But I don't think there should be any restrictions because of that. Cool. Are we able to customize the bot language? Yes. Now the coding language is obviously dependent on which language you are using. But if I go to, sorry, not that one, but if I go to my bot solution, if I go to my, so basically the language is what is the main thing. Now this one doesn't have, let me see, I think one of them has it. Yeah. So as you guys can see, there are multiple languages that your LUIS can be trained on. So you can actually speak the same intent, which is interpreted in English in the backend, but can be asked by people from different languages, and that can be interpreted into a particular command on your LUIS. And now the programming language is obviously dependent on what OS you are on, what programming language you use. But otherwise, if you're talking about LUIS, the conversation with the users, it can be all local. And to that point, I actually have a blog post on that also, which is about creating a multilingual bot. So you can actually go ahead and create a multilingual bot. I'll post that link there. So if you go and search So I had this very fun requirement where it wanted to create a multilingual pod which will actually be like, you can write in Spanish or you write in English, doesn't matter. You just want to actually go ahead and get the answer that you need in that language. So you basically create a multilingual pod also, which can be used as a skill, and that can be useful in that scenario. But otherwise, Lewis is obviously kind of valuable to you. It is multilingual, so it will not cause any issues. Do I need to have a coding background to make a virtual assistant? Yes. The simple answer to that is yes. You need to know some kind of coding language like TypeScript or C# because that's where your custom code and everything comes in. Now, if you are not interested in coding, you can just drag in the solution. You can just deploy it upfront, and you still need some knowledge about deploying it and how to use it. But if you want to use the skill directly, you can just use Power Virtual Agent and then connect the skill to it, and that your front end is Power Virtual Assistant, and that Power Virtual Agent, and that will act as your front end, and you don't need to work. You can skip the coding there, but you still need to know the coding for skill deployments and everything. So you need to have some coding language. Now that has brought to a very good point. I will be looking into it of automating some of those stuff. So people who are actually interested in just getting used to it, they don't have to go and learn a lot of stuff. So that's a good point. Thanks for that. Roughly what cost? Now I put some figure out there. I was trialing it out initially, and it cost me $400 with a simple email skill, calendar skill, virtual assistant skill, and my custom skill because the search RPUs were consuming a lot. I didn't know that I was on pricing tier. The problem with Azure Search, I think the issue is still there, is you cannot change the pricing tier once you've created it. So if you are on standard, you are on standard, and based on the replicas you have, you start churning money like crazy. So it will cost you a lot of money. So I'm giving you a number, but not necessarily that number. If you use my parameter template suggestion, you can actually reduce your cost to $60 or $70, depending on, you need to spend some money, but you can reduce that cost. What do you find is the best scenario to use VA in Teams? As I was saying earlier, support, help desk, uh, any kind of business kind of integrations, like you want to do custom flows with your CRR systems, Salesforce systems, extending knowledge bases. So if you want to, extend your files and you want to bring the like as a kind of artificial human interaction, you want to build a knowledge base to your business, you can use that. Like I suppose one of the good examples, which I think I keep hearing from one of my not connect is the university scenario with the Q&A bot or something, QBot, which actually helps students to interact with each other and create a knowledge base around it. So there are a lot of virtual assistant scenarios that you can do. So cool. I suppose those were all the questions in the chat. But yeah, so the thing is, there are obviously so much stuff that you would be going through as you start working through a virtual assistant scenario. So start thinking small, and as you are going through this, there are obviously questions that will arise and feedback that you need. Please free to reach out to us. The community people posted in Bot Solutions. Reach out to me. Reach out to your nearest contact for a Microsoft, so that you can ask those questions. And it's really critical because don't just drop the ball because it's hard. uh, there are stuff that you can do, and there are people who have the same challenges. uh, so if you start interacting, you start asking questions, somebody will come out with the answer, and when Microsoft comes up with the answer very fast on these ones. So cool. Great. So yeah, thanks everyone for posting the questions and joining today. It was really nice talking again about virtual assistant. If you guys are really interested in more detailed sessions, please put out a message or send a request, and then basically I will try to do more detail. I did a hands-on last month, but it was too technical, I suppose. But I'm going to do a high level 200 or 300 if needed. Cool. So that's all from my end. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you for that, Ashish, and thank you for everyone for joining this evening. We will post a recording of the session in the next few days. So yeah, we will see you at the next Reactor live stream. Thank you again and have a good night. Bye.